Alright, what's going on, guys? It is your boy TKD Winter here, back here at PlayStation Source. And of course, if you guys have been on the channel, you guys have seen that we have completed and done the entire God of War stream series. Of course, those are the console-based God of War games. They aren't the PSP games, those being, of course, God of War Goes to Sparta and God of War Chains of Olympus. Those are probably due at some point later on down the line, but I just focus on the core God of War games. So, of course, those being God of War 2, God of War 3, God of War Ascension, and God of War 2018. And in the same vein that I did for the Uncharted series, I want to sit down and really just get my thoughts out and really just rank these all in my personal opinion. So without further ado, here is my personal ranking of the God of War series in terms of the console games, but make sure to let me know down below what is your ranking as well. So I think we'll work bottom to top because I think that, this list, I'm gonna have to talk and really explain, I feel like, and really put up my type of defense as I'm ranking this, because I think that I'm not sure if this is actually a very popular ranking series. I think it might be, honestly, but let's start off with number 5, of course. That is the game that started it all. Yes, guys, I know, God of War 1 on the PlayStation 2, right? Look, I understand that God of War 1 probably has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people, and it is the first game in the series, so it did start off like that, you know what I'm saying? And I know there's a lot of really, really big lore moments that happen in there that really kick off Kratos' arc up until God of War 2018, right? I totally get that, right? But if you're looking at it as a game in 2020, y'all, it is interesting, right? And you can't really blame it, right? Of course, you can't really blame a game that has outdated and old mechanics or just really weird game design for having those things and being them, and having that be the negative of that game in 2020. That's just not fair, right? Because it's not like there are every single game that was before this generation is bad per se, but I will say that I have played better PS2 games. That's what I will say. That I think that overall, I think there were better PS2 games, and I do understand that God of War on the PS2 when it first came out was this big technical marvel. It was a big deal, right? It's just that there are just a lot of annoying things in God of War 1. And if you guys saw my stream series, you know what I'm saying, y'all know how I did in the final boss battle with Ares, and that was it was interesting. It was very interesting. Even before you actually go and really fight Ares at the end of the game, when you're in that kind of dream state where you're fighting copies of yourself and you're trying to protect your wife and kid and stuff like that, that whole dream sequence, if you will, that inner mind thing, that was so gruesome. Oh my god, that was insane on stream. If y'all were there, y'all know. So overall, I think God of War, of course, giving it its respect for starting the series and stuff like that, and honestly giving a really cool way to introduce the story going forward, as well as tell how Kratos got to the point in the beginning of the game. It's all kind of told in a backstory type of way, where the Oracle is essentially recounting the tale of Kratos, and even the backstory of that, where of course while we are recounting Kratos' tales during the first game of God of War, we have the Oracle also telling us the backstory of Kratos when he was a Spartan, being a warrior, and he did that blood oath with Ares to save him from the Vikings and stuff like that. So overall, it's a really cool thing. It's really neat overall, and I respect it for that. But overall, I think God of War is definitely showing its age, and it's at number 5. Next up here, the last God of War on PS3 that was released the same year as the PlayStation 4, that is of course God of War Ascension. Let's talk about this one, right? And this one had the pretense of, I heard a lot about how God of War Ascension, was looked at as trash, it wasn't good, you know what I'm saying? And I definitely went into this game expecting it to be that trash, right? Allegedly, that's just all I've heard about the game. The only thing I've heard that was positive about God of War Ascension was that the multiplayer, I guess, wasn't really that bad, and a lot of people actually enjoyed that multiplayer. But beside the point, the main story and the main game, the main cream of the crop of God of War Ascension was not so creamy, you know what I'm saying? So let's talk about it, right? So upon beating the game, I actually came around on it a lot, right? I don't necessarily hate God of War Ascension, you know what I'm saying? I do think that it is a very weird game. I think that's the best way I would describe it. It's a very weird game and a very weird weird God of War. But at first, that was not at all my takeaway. That first stream of God of War Ascension, I gotta tell you guys, I was not feeling it at all. The chat saw it. I definitely felt it. I was definitely not feeling God of War Ascension at all on the first stream that we did for the stream series. But as the game kind of progressed and the game opened up and everything, and I got used to the very, very oddly weird control changes that they did with God of War Ascension that made no sense, and the parry system in that game is god awful, where you have to be like already like holding down block and then you have to tap a different button. I think it was whatever it was, I forget what it was, but it was just so backwards. It's not just a simple tap, it was some other things. It was very, very weird. I hate that parry system, but overall I think the story is a little bit cumbersome. I think it definitely does fall short in a lot of different ways. I feel like not a lot of it is explained in the best way, but from a gameplay perspective, as I got used to the overall game and as I got more different elements that I can use with my blades to pull off different moves and stuff like that and rank up those individual type of elements that I can rotate towards on the Blades of Chaos, I think it was, or the Blades of Athena. I forget which one. No, it'd be Blades of Chaos, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely the Blades of Chaos, if I remember correctly. I thought that, as I ranked up those elements, I thought that it actually ended up being really fun in a lot of different, ways, and I thought that it was a, although very, very different God of War, I think that it still has a place where you can garner a lot of fun out of God of War Ascension, but there's a big gap, right? There's God of War 1, right? And then let's say maybe like half a mile up, there's God of War Ascension, where like, it's definitely a step up, right, than God of War, but the next three that we are going to talk about up here, there is a massive gap between Ascension and the number 3 spot and 2 and 1, of course, but all things considered, overall, I thought God of War Ascension was a very interesting thing, and it just didn't pay off, right? And that's, not the hero there, what I'm saying? They took a chance with a different direction with God of War, and it didn't necessarily pan out, and I don't necessarily hate God of War Ascension at the end of the day. I thought they did some really cool things in there. There was some really cool moments and stuff like that, but overall, I will give it the, I guess, nod for being interesting. Next up here, let's talk about it. Definitely the most technically impressive God of War on the PS3 system. That is, technically God of War Ascension would be, but I think that God of War 3 was just overall just a better game. That's, of course, at the number 3 spot, God of War 3. Now let's talk about this game, because I did play a different version of this game than the retail PS3 version. I played the God of War 3 remaster for the PS4, right? So that's going to definitely add a lot of context to what I'm about to say. I think that you can put a lot of grains of salt on that whole thing, what I'm about to go on about God of War 3, in terms of, I played the PS4 version. I didn't play the original default PS3 version that came out, I think, back in 2008 or 2009, something like that. So we could have that conversation, as well as just to be, blatantly out there. God of War 2, God of War Ascension, and God of War 1. I did play streaming on PS Now, but I do feel like the visuals that I got to experience on PS Now didn't really hinder the overall experience of the game from a visual standpoint, right? So definitely, that is what it is. But God of War 3, I did play natively on my PS4, the remastered version, and guys, oh my god, it's a beautiful remaster. It looks great. It's such a visually stunning game, and it definitely was a giant step up, from playing God of War 2 and the original God of War that were, of course, on PS2, and to have the first God of War on PS3 be God of War 3, it was insane, right? Like, it was such a, visually so many levels above God of War 2, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was remarkable. Of course, taking into account that I did play it on the PS4, so I haven't seen a ton of PS3 footage. I've seen a few here and there, and they look pretty similar overall, like, from a general standpoint. Like, it's not like the remaster is like some crazy massive leap from the PS3 version, overall, right? Of course, PS3 had that special sauce, had that cell processor, you know what I'm saying? So it looked really good on that platform as well. But God of War 3, let's talk about it. I feel like overall it is, I think, the most refined God of War experience from the PS2 era that is not God of War Ascension, right? If that makes sense, right? So like I feel like overall, if you have Ascension, right, and you take away all that it changed from the God of War core games, you have God of War 3, right? And I really feel like God of War 3 was a great kind of evolution with the God of War series to still keep it mainly in its roots, but just double down on what made it fun and what made God of War, and really just take it to a different level on the PS3. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like they did a really, really, really good job with that. I love the way the, Kratos trilogy in the Greek world, how that all ended up, you know what I'm saying, in God of War 3. No spoilers, but a lot of cool stuff happened there. Also, the very memorable dream sequence, well, not dream, I guess death sequence, in God of War 3 is just incredible, right? Like there are so many cool moments in God of War 3 that definitely are in my mind still, even a few weeks after playing the game. You know what I'm saying? So overall, God of War 3 definitely up there. I love the story about it. I think it was really cool. They introduced really cool things that I feel like they were also kind of leading up to Kratos having a younger companion, that being a child. Kind of like we see it starting in God of War 3. So I kind of feel like maybe this was the stepping stone to having a child, AI companion, be with Kratos, that we will see, of course, in God of War 2018. So overall, God of War 3, great game, love it, but I don't love it as much as the number 2 game. Overall, if God of War 2018 never happened, right, this would be far and away my number 1. God of War 2, y'all, it is some flame. I love that game from start to finish, especially the ending. But let's talk about the beginning and the middle and the whole meat of God of War 2, right? I feel like God of War 2 is by far the most well-paced God of War from the PS2 era perspective. So if we're talking from the God of War hack and slash, top-down view, kind of sort of, we are talking from those God of Wars excluding 2018, right? God of War 2 is the most, I feel like, well-paced. I think it has the best combat flow. I think it has the most rewarding unlocks. I think it has the most rewarding type of story beats and everything. I think overall, God of War 2 was such an adventure, y'all. Like, I still think about God of War 2 to this day. I love God of War 2, right? Like how the whole premise is that you are going after the fates, right? So that you can go back in time to the moment that Zeus stabs you and essentially takes away your god, well, not even essentially, does take away your godhood, and you go back to that exact moment and pick up right where it left off at the end of the game. Like, oh my, like, essentially in God of War 2, like, very little time passes in reality, in the actual time of the game, but it is so good. I think there's so much lore in there that adds, it's so interesting. I think that overall, like, God of War 2 far and away is by far like my favorite God of War from the old era of God of Wars, again excluding 2018, right? Because y'all already know y'all already know what number 1 is at this point, right? But God of War 2 specifically, I want to talk lastly about God of War 2, right? Of course I can rant and rave about God of War 2 forever, right? But that ending, y'all, the end to God of War 2. We finished God of War 2, right? Right before we had to play The Last of Us Part 2. Right? And oh my God, God of War 2, that ending is one of the best endings I have ever seen in gaming of all time, right? Like, I wish that I was a fly on the wall, right? At the millions of people that got to experience God of War 2 and how hyped they were to get God of War 3 on the PS3. Like, oh my God, like God of War 2's ending is literally phenomenal. Like, it is so good, and it's a ending that really makes you want to play the sequel like right now. You know what I'm saying? And oh man, God of War 2, phenomenal. Everyone should go play it, right? Honestly, at this point, if you really want to be a completionist, right, and play through all the God of Wars, I understand. Go and play God of War 1. Have fun if you can find it, right? Have fun, right? But I would honestly recommend everyone just watch a recap video of God of War 1, because there's not a lot of info you have to know to make God of War 2 make sense, right? But I really would honestly low-key recommend everyone to give that God of War 1 a little skip. You know what I'm saying? Just just pass on it. Watch a recap video, read up on Wikipedia, read up the story synopsis, because there's not a lot of info that you need to know about God of War 1 that is super pertinent to God of War 2, right? I would say, honestly, just start with God of War 2, because God of War 2 is so much, and also on top of it, right? If you think that God of War 2, right, was also on the PS2, which, mind you, the PS3 was already released at that point. So Sony Santa Monica still put out God of War 2 on the PS2, right? And the amount of quality that is shown from God of War 2 versus God of War 1 is absolutely insane. Like, the step up is insane. Like, I don't know how to like convey that with words. How much of a better game God of War 2 is from God of War 1. It's such a step up. It's so worth it. Honestly, if 2018 didn't exist, God of War 2 would be my favorite God of War by a mile. And of course, here we are, the number 1 spot. Who is really shocked, right? Like, how long, I mean, how much can I really put up this argument that, God of War 2018 is, of course, the greatest God of War game ever made. If not, honestly, I ranked it as my favorite game of all time on JoyClick's Gamescast, you know what I'm saying? And this, recent replay of God of War 2018 that I had was the second time through that I have played the game, right? And this one was very different, I feel like, in my eyes, because I got the overall context and the full scale of the context. I am missing, of course, the PSP games, of course, Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus, right? But I feel like overall I got the core gist of Kratos' arc, pertaining to the main console God of Wars leading up to 2018, and I feel like the experience took it to another level of depth after I had played all of the previous God of Wars in a row leading up here to 2018. Of course, God of War 2018 has that groundbreaking story, and I feel like it is the best overall conveyed story in terms of there being, of course, no cut camera, and it being just a true, like, overall just journey that happens over the course of a very short amount of time and everything. That whole aspect, of course, with the overall aspect of Kratos having a Leviathan axe and him being, of course, in this new world in more of a Norse mythology type of area, as of course the very, very contrasting Greek world that he was in his previous arc and stuff like that, and seeing how much time has passed in between God of War 3 and God of War 2018, you really see, when you break it all down, and at least I felt this way, you know what I'm saying, like, a lot more amplified, how much of a different Kratos he is in God of War 2018 while still being Kratos. What I mean by that is that we really see an adaptation of Kratos in 2018, and it's not necessarily a change. It's not black and white. It's as if Kratos is a different shade of red in 2018, where he uses his power and uses his godlyhood and uses the strength that he wields, that he used to wield for indulgence, for just killing because he felt that the gods wronged him, and they did wrong him, to be fair, right? Like, it's not, Kratos did not just, I feel like, for the majority of God of War, he didn't just kill senselessly, even though he did in his early years as, the blood with Ares and stuff like that, and how he was tempted by Ares to do all those horrible things, right? I feel like overall, in the God of War 1, 2, and 3 era of Kratos, he was primarily killing as a means to an end to get back at the gods, and I really feel like at its core, like, he did to a certain degree like that power in a way, even though he does talk about how it is a curse and stuff like that, but he really, feels that, like, at least I personally think that, he took a level of enjoyment out of killing in the original God of War timeline back in God of War 1, 2, and 3. Who knows how much that is, you know what I'm saying? And I don't think it's that much, but I do feel like to a certain degree, Kratos enjoyed the power of being a god, even though he did recognize back then, and more so in 2018, that it is a curse that he wanted to break, right? And with 2018, I feel like we see a Kratos that finally kind of really consumes and really comes to terms with who he is as the God of War, and uses his power for the ultimate justice and the ultimate good of just overall what he's trying to achieve in God of War 2018. And I feel like he really did take a huge step in terms of using his godlyhood for goodness and not for destruction and not for vengeance and not really for any of those things that he used to go after with his godhood back in the original games. And of course, the introduction of the great cast in God of War 2018, we have of course Atreus. You know what I'm saying? Come on now. Like the overall kind of, I feel like, really great way that they were able to show Kratos' growth was through a son, you know what I'm saying, with Atreus. I feel like that was a great way to do it, and I feel like overall Atreus, was just in there just to help you just enough in combat where it's not too cumbersome to handle him overall from a control standpoint. He's just an overall great, AI companion that I think a lot of people and like a lot of other devs should be using as an example as a great AI companion. But of course, to stop right there would be an absolute, just downplay of all the other great characters in God of War 2018. We have, of course, Baldur. We have, of course, the goddess herself, Freya. Of course, we have Faye, the silent character that, is dead the whole time, but really does, I think, speak a lot towards the end of the game. I'm not gonna, really, spoil it right there, but that's where I'll keep it at. If you know, you know. You know what I'm saying? We have the hilarious Mimir and his whole, stories in the boat whenever they are traveling. Mimir is such a great comedic relief, and in like a lot of different ways, Mimir is a great type of backstory teller that really does kind of give the overall world context and really does explain a lot of things to Kratos and Atreus as well as the player themselves. Of course, I would never forget about the dwarves Brock and Sindri. They are hilarious, 10 out of 10 characters, very funny, and I love to see their arc as well as it evolves in the game as a whole, and seeing all of, the backstory of Tyr and how he was another god of war and stuff like that, and just the overall lore that was in that world, in the overall story of Kratos was just fantastic. And of course, the end of the game is one of the best endings I've ever felt in my entire life. It's such a heartfelt and good feeling ending. You know what I'm saying? If you aren't to any degree moved by the end of God of War 2018, I don't know, man. Like I was really moved by it. I thought it was a great end. And overall, God of War 2018, of course, the cream of the crop of the game is come on, the combat. You know what I'm saying? The combat is phenomenal. I love the way they made Kratos still feel like the hack and slash Kratos, but just more evolved, just a little more different, and to make it feel fresh and new, of course. God of War 2018, in a lot of people's eyes, is still the best game on PS4, and I won't even defend that. You know what I'm saying? Like I won't even argue against that. Like it is clear that God of War 2018 is the game of the generation in my eyes, even in spite of Last of Us Part 2, which is another contender up in that whole space as well. I think those two games definitely are game of the generation, but for me personally, I think that God of War 2018 really did a lot to evolve Kratos and really revive an IP to make it restored in a newfound glory. So God of War 2018 is number one. That is my favorite God of War game, and that has been my ranking on the God of War series. But definitely, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Where do you rank the God of War games? How do you feel about them? What are your thoughts on them? Did you not like my ranking? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure also, while you are down there, to check out our description where you can find our Twitter, Discord server, as well as our Anchor link. That way you can listen to our long-form content and podcast format. Those, of course, being Road to PS5, where we go over PS5 news and topics up until release of the PS5, and other Road to Podcast series dedicated to your favorite PlayStation IP. Like the video if you enjoyed it, ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload or stream, hit that join button as well, or link in the description to become a member of the channel with the $5 King tier or the $1 Prince tier, just like the homies Owen, Bashful Brody, and Caleb Kaiser did. Stay subscribed to PlayStation Source to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. Thank you all for watching, and as always, greatness awaits.